Welcome to Hal's Hit List with legendary actor Hal Williams. This week brings more Hollywood love. Janet Jackson, Sanaa Lathan. They're just getting started. Black Love on Film, Part 2.
Let's do this.
Oh, look at that. Hey, all right.
What do you think?
Let's go to lunch. Hell with the show.
Thought I'd try something different for this episode.
I'll tell you what. I'll meet you at Cafe de Mundo in 20 minutes.
Yes, for some beignets, right?
That's right.
Oh my God.
Hey. This is Hal Williams back with Hal's Hit List along with Charlotte Hambrick, our Emmy Award winning co-host and producer and everything, and Fox, Super Fox out of New Orleans. And we're back here with Black Love Part 2. If you saw one, if you sneaked and saw one any kind of way, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because we're ready to roll
today. We are just getting started.
Give it to them, Charlotte.
Welcome to Hal's Hit List. We went through part 1. We're going through the history of Black romance films in Hollywood. We left off in the 1980s, exploring Prince and a few other movies in the 1980s. We're now going to move into the 90s, and we're going to start off with Poetic Justice, still grieving after the murder of her boyfriend, hairdresser Justice, played by Janet Jackson. Is there a theme going on with singers parlaying into movies, particularly romance movies? We talked about Whitney Houston, Lena Horne.
Yeah. That's been going on a long time. And I think that with females, it's a lot easier to ease into that transition because of what they are and what they represent and what they bring to whatever you're doing. I think
they already have a built-in audience.
Yeah, right. And an appreciation for it because we have not seen it that often. We've seen it in spurts, we've seen it in spots, we've seen it in spurts, and we've seen it in periods, and then there'll be nothing for 7, 8 years, and then all at once something else will hit and trigger it and then start a whole run on things. So I think that's what's kind of going on right today.
Yeah, I find when they say how many followers do you have and how much social media do you have, but it seemed like it was really easy for someone who already had a built-in audience. We're going to start with Poetic Justice, still grieving after the murder of her boyfriend, hairdresser Justice, played by Janet Jackson, writes poetry to deal with this pain of her loss. Unable to get to Oakland to attend a convention because of her broken down car, Justin gets a lift from her friend, Regina King, playing the character of Leisha. And Leisha, postal worker's boyfriend, Chicago Joe Torre, along for the ride is Chicago's co-worker, Lucky, played by Tupac Shakur. So unable to get a ride to Oakland to attend a convention because of her broken down car, Justice, again played by Janet Jackson, gets a lift by her friend, Leisha, played by Regina King. Someone you know, Hal, for sure.
Vaguely, yes.
Exactly. So let's talk about this. This was John Singleton. It was his second film. It was the follow-up to Boys in the Hood.
Boys in the Hood, right.
So let's get into that. Poetic Justice. What are your thoughts?
I think it was an intriguing film. In fact, I just saw it a couple of weeks ago. For that time, you knew there was a renaissance, a change taking place. And with John, to go from Boys in the Hood to this, and to have 4 characters riding along in a postal truck for all on their way to Oakland and see the different transitions, the different levels of personalities clashing, getting along, and otherwise, I mean, it was something new, and he did it very, very well.
Would you consider it Black love? Would you consider it a romance?
Yeah, it was like a Shakespearean tragedy. You know, that's what it was, because there was love, there was sorrow, and there were interactions with the ladies and the young men, uh, made a whole different scenario about how we deal with different tragedies, successes, happiness, sorrow, all of those things. It was different because everybody handles different things, different situations in a different way, whether it's joy, sorrow, anger, whatever. And the way these four people handled the different levels of whatever they were talking about or discussing or aiming toward or reminiscing over was excellently done. And I think we got to attribute a lot of that to John Singleton, because these people were all very young, and he brought it out of them. He brought it out, all of them. To me, they weren't all at that time seasoned actors. Not really. They were known for other things, you know. And he, as director, and as innovative as I know he was, and it shows in all of his work. He did a Herculean task of bringing that film through the way he did and have it turn out the way it did.
Absolutely. And to get to that raw level of Janet Jackson, I mean, Tupac, in my opinion, was a natural. And Regina,
Right.
you know, had obvious, she worked with you, so she obviously had acting experience and she knew about timing and all of these things. But even for her, this was a very different role. And John got a very different performance out of Regina.
Out of her, yes, she did. The first time I heard my daughter use that kind of language, I went to see it at the Academy on a Sunday, me and Ivan Dixon, the famous director. And he said, well, what do you think when it was over? I said, I never thought I had my child of mine talk like that.
No.
And she was very, but on 227, she was such a naturally nice kid and everything. And to see what she did in Poetic Justice, come on, please. Yes, sir.
She went there.
She's a force to be reckoned with.
That, yeah, she definitely took her acting to an entirely different level.
What they call
John,
a kick-ass
you give
performance.
him credit for that. That's cool.
He brought that out of her. Yeah.
Well, I was putting this list together with a young lady that works with me, and this was a film that she said we had to include. We had to include Love Jones with Lawrence Tate and Nia Long. Nia Long is an actress. She has this formula of romantic comedies and romance films. She has that down. I mean, she's starred in quite a few. But this one, she's an aspiring photographer. She shares an instant connection with a chance meeting at a Chicago club. They bond over music, photography, and poetry. It's set in New York. And what do you think about this one?
To me, it was she carried that film for me. She carried that film. She really did. She put it on her shoulders and just went with it. I enjoyed it because I'm always attracted to something new and different. And that was just about the first thing I ever saw her in. I didn't really know who she was.
Isn't she?
Yeah. It still is adorable, and I've seen her in many, many things since, television and movies. She's just a great talent. She's just a great, great talent. And Lawrence, I've seen a side of him where he was in Crooklyn. He was he's in Power, the series on Power on TV. He's a crooked councilman getting ready to run for governor, and he's overpowering in that.
Yeah, he's great in that, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just playing such a snake in that series. He and Omari Hardwick just bounce off each other every time they had a scene, and to see him he's a likable guy anyway, and to see him go in the opposite. If you see him go in the opposite direction, it tickles me. I said, go ahead, get him, brother, get him, do it to him. So yeah, it's great. It's great.
Now, the film I'm going to bring up right now it was a different sort of love story, a different Black love kind of. This was the first time that older Black women were portrayed to be sexy, and your average woman was portrayed to be sexy. Bassett, she decided that she was going to go for it, no matter what, with Whoopi Goldberg as her sidekick.
Yes,
and I'm talking about how Stella
got her groove back. Yeah.
It also was set in Jamaica, which is absolutely beautiful. And you have this 40-year-old woman going to this island, and she starts a fling with Taye Diggs, this handsome 20-something-year-old, and they take it from there. And that was something that was unheard of and not seen on the big screen before. So I'm dying to hear your thoughts about the older woman and the younger man. We've seen the older man and the younger women, over and over and over again. But this was the first time that the older woman and the younger man was fully explored.
Okay. I know what I want to say, but I'm scared to say it.
You say what you're going to say.
In that movie, she was a great looking older woman. I don't know what kind of program she was on, but she was knocked to the top. Beautiful. And she was working out. You could tell she was working out because Barry Shabaka, who was teamed up there with Whoopi down on the beach, he was salivating. He played his role real good, but he was salivating. I was salivating, and I was just looking at it. I said, yeah, the young man would be hitting on her. I don't blame him. No man in his right mind looking at that woman. She was an older woman, but she wasn't no old woman, where you were
40,
saying, why are you looking at that old woman? I'm looking at that body. I'm looking at the body language. I'm looking at it. Yes. This gets a yes for me. It was great. And they set it up perfectly, They set it up perfect. She was coy, because she knew he was so much younger, and she played up. She wasn't offended, He was tactful about his approach and everything. Oh, it was beautiful.
She was old enough to be his mother. She was old enough to be his mother.
Well, mother me,
Well, that one was based on a book, and Terry McMillan, and somewhat turned out to be a true story. And she ended up marrying a much younger man. So it wasn't that far off from the truth.
I think it can work. I think it can work. Well, also, it's not in that same genre of film. Not one to take anything away from what you got here. What about Waiting to Exhale?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
That happened to be in there too.
That was a bunch of women who took it to a whole new level.
Hey, they took it, baby. They took it.
Well, how many women you think start booking tickets to Jamaica? How many travel agents? How many travel agents? Hi, I want a round trip ticket to Jamaica.
That's right. That's right.
I bet tourism in Jamaica really picked up after this movie, without a doubt. Everybody trying to get the groove.
Yeah.
For sure. Now we're going to go into Y2K. We're going to go into the 2000s, and we're going to start out with love and basketball. In my opinion, if you're going to mix any two things together, I love basketball and a romance. And you have Sanaa Lathan, who is so talented, and Omar Epps, two childhood friends, which makes it even more special.
Right.
What do you think about that one?
Oh, that was a great one. That's a great one. And where they shot it was my old neighborhood. It made it even more endearing to me in LA and Baldwin Hills. But the chemistry between the two of them as they aged, as they matured or didn't mature, the way they took on certain situations as they got better at what they were doing, and the things that, even though in the back of her mind, she's been in love with him since he's 11 years old,
I know.
That kind of thing. There was a girl that I dated, I didn't date, that I grew up with, ended up marrying and have 3 kids. He used to throw a brick at me every day, So it was that brought back memories of that when I look at Love and Basketball, because he messed around like he was cute. He was the star. All the girls were after him and everything. She didn't even want to wear a dress. She wanted to wear boy stuff all the time and be
She
a
was a baller.
basketball player.
She was a
She wanted to be
baller.
a baller. She ain't caring nothing about all that other stuff, but she still dug him in spite of all of that, you know. So I thought it was very entertaining. It was a great film, great film.
She definitely had skill in that, and the idea that they were childhood sweethearts definitely carried over. Dennis was in that film too, as well.
Dennis Haysbert played his father, played Q's father, who had been a basketball playing for the Clippers of all people, but he was also philandering man about town with the ladies and stuff. And he had committed a couple of adulterous transgressions that messed up his marriage and his relationship with his son. But yeah, Dennis and I go way back. We go back to theater in Los Angeles Actors Theater, but he's a great guy too. Yeah. And Alfred Woodard played the mom.
Oh, I forgot she was in that. How?
She was the mom for Sanan Lathan. Yeah. And they had some wonderful things in there too about what kind of mom she was, that she never came to a game or hardly ever had anything to say about it. And somewhere in the film, they have a conversation where a mother tells her what she really felt and why she wasn't coming to games and stuff. It was a great film.
Yeah, and so many wonderful elements to it. This is going to bring us to a film that got huge accolades, and that's Moonlight.
Mm-hmm.
Moonlight was a different type of story. When I saw it, I was blown away about a young man coming into manhood and falling in love with a same-sex character.
Right.
And so it was beautifully done. And what do you think about it?
It was beautifully done. It was tastefully handled. I didn't know what I was going to see when I went to see it. You know, I didn't know really what it was all about. Certainly not what it turned out to be. But it didn't disturb me. It gave me somewhat of a better insight and understanding into that kind of a relationship. Even though I have friends who I've had for years, or been exposed to that long before I came to Hollywood. So it was wonderful to see it portrayed skillfully portrayed in a tasteful manner.
Mm-hmm.
In a very tasteful manner. I see right today elements of it, and to me, it's a turnoff because there's a difference between love, compassion, and lust.
Okay.
And that will turn me off in a minute. The latter. So I have appreciating feelings for the whole thing being done tastefully, and trying to understand, because everybody, as I said before, approaches everything in a different manner. The way you process information is not the same way I'm going to process it. So your understanding of things that are presented to you depend on where you are with yourself.
Right.
Do you know who you are?
Right.
Before you judge anybody else. So.
Well, and Barry Jenkins, I think it had a lot to do with the direction of the film as well. And do you remember what happened at the Academy Awards with that film?
Yeah, they just said La La Land won.
And then all of a sudden you found out that Moonlight won, and how the audience was like, what's going on?
Wasn't that Shirley's brother, Warren Beatty? Was that the one that Warren Beatty messed up? Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah, it was Best Picture. I mean, it was the biggest, prize of the night. And that, you know what? This is one of the few films that I watched more than once. I rarely watch a film more than once. I just don't. And this was one that I had to see a second time. And there's so much nuance that you get when you watch it a second time that you didn't get the first time. And I was really surprised at the Academy, which, is an organization with much older members, that they chose this film to be the Best Picture. And maybe, they started bringing in younger, more diverse members And this may have been the test of that. What do you think?
Well, as we pointed out in another show, in our Oscar show, that in the latter years, the Academy has invited folks to join. I had to be sponsored, depending on my credits and background of work and body of work, to get into the Academy. It used to be made up of old souls. It's not that way anymore. And it wasn't. It was, the transition was starting to take place back when this film was made. So I understand a lot of it. You know, I do. I understand a lot of it. Still, they got a long ways to go as far as that. Because see, here's the way I am, as opposed to you. Maybe because I come from an actor film, I have to usually see a film the third time to be entertained by it. The first time, I'm looking at production values and everything else, and then I'm looking at the acting and the story and things like that. Then I just watch the film to be entertained. And I've always been that way.
Well, I can promise you that I am not selecting these films based on a relationship that I know that you have with an actress by the name of Regina King. This, but this particular film is definitely a love story and a display of Black love that came out in 2018 called If Beale Street Could Talk. And I want to say to anybody in the audience, if you have not seen this film, you should definitely take a look at this film. What do you think?
Everybody should see the film. I mean, not because she's one of the loves of my life as an offspring from TV or otherwise. She's also kind of an offspring off the set. Our families are from Ohio. Her mother's down in Cincinnati. I talk to her every other month or so. And I've tried to impress upon her the skills and the levels of professionalism that I thought she needed to apply if she wanted to stay in this business. And let me tell you something, she listened and learned and does every one of them admirably. That's why she's where she is today. Look at, she's won, 2 Emmys and the Academy Award. I mean, the way she approaches her work, the way in this particular film, the role she played made you think, if you've known, I know some mothers and females who were just like that character. And Regina brought it to the screen, wonderfully. It made me go back and recall and think the things that she was willing to do in the film. So everybody should see it. Everybody should see it.
I think you're right. And when you bring up the mom, because this film, it wasn't just about the relationship between the 2 kids, the mom's relationship and her level of love also was so important to the glue of this film. And Regina was phenomenal. And it was set in the 1970s in Harlem. So it was a period piece, which is hard to do, as you know, and to get people interested in this love story. That was, a period piece.
Yeah, you really have to, that's, when you're doing a period piece, you have to get inside yourself and think outside and inside the box about what was going on at the time, and make sure you research properly and explore every avenue. You can't cram too much knowledge into your portrayal when it's like that and from that era. Especially, I remember even doing some of the things we did in television on 227. Certain things they would have us do, and I would say, no, you can't do that. And so why I said, because Marla and I came through in a generation that would never allow, especially in Black culture, she couldn't get away. Regina, they'd have Regina doing something. I said, no, Lester has to be going to work if she's going to do that. If you're going to insist on having that in the episode, well, Lester's at the office. He didn't see it.
Oh,
that
wow.
Kind of thing.
Okay.
That kind of thing, and that's where you have to go with period stuff. Yeah, especially if you're younger, and you didn't live it. How else you going to know? You got to, I grew up with people my age, but I always consorted with older guys, hung out and listen to them. Sometimes they forget I'm in the room. If you just be quiet, you can learn a lot. Because they forget you're there and they tell all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this next film that I want to talk about, which came out in 2019, and when I put this on the list as your producer, I got some pushback because someone said to me, "This isn't a love story; it's a tragedy." And I said, no, this is a love story. It brings, a whole new meaning to, Rada, and this is Queen and Slim.
Right.
Daniel and Jodie Turner Smith. I mean, this is a couple that's on their first date, and we talked about first dates, and everything goes wrong. And she's an attorney, and they're in the car, and they're approached by the police. And how that changed the trajectory of their life was unbelievable. And they just were determined that they were going to stay together. I cannot wait to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, it wasn't a Bonnie and Clyde story, but it was a love story of two people coming together under the worst conditions, innocently, and going back to what we're going through right now, policing and the differences of being pulled over and what in your behavior, your body language, the way you're treated, the way you approach, the lack of respect for you as a citizen. Protect and serve. Protect and serve means nothing. That's what this whole thing is about in this film. And they were thrown into a situation that was almost forced upon them. It was forced upon them. They didn't set out to do all of that. They were having a nice time. And then you threw this other element in there. It changed everything for good. And it just steamrolled. It picked up as it went along. It just kept getting worse. And the picture, the ugly picture that's what I was in it, or would resent normally. The ugly picture that was being painted about the two of them along the way, that people didn't know anything about them.
And they actually eventually made their way to Louisiana. So whenever they use Louisiana in a film, obviously it's close to my heart when that happens. And so when they got to that part, I was like, oh my God, I know where they are.
The house was right down the street from you.
I know. It's like I can't believe it. I'm not that hood, but I'm far.
No, I'm just being, just being.
I know you are. I know you are. But I loved it, and Daniel had a great performance in this.
The ending tore me apart. The ending tore me apart.
Absolutely. It's a love story. I don't care. I'm standing by it.
No, I'm just saying. I had to throw that in because I didn't want to forget to say it.
Oh, what was that?
The way the film ended, because he could have survived if he'd have done certain things, but it was his love for her. He would not let go of her for any reason. I don't care what.
You agree with me. You agree with me. Yeah. It's a love story.
It was love. Yeah, exactly. So.
Okay. Let's take a look at The Photograph, which is 2020. That, I want to hear your thoughts, and then we're going to move on to something else. I have a surprise that one of our producers is one of her favorite movies, Zena, and we're going to get to that. But first, let's talk about The Photograph. And I'm going to leave the audience wondering what that movie is that is going to close out this segment.
Oh, okay.
The Photograph.
The Photograph with Issa Rae and Lakeith Stanfield. Wonderful film. Story told about the young girl's mother who was not going to settle, even though she was living down in Louisiana, had become a photography buff, but wanted to move on and elevate her skills on a higher plane in another place where she become more successful and go for some goals. And because of her association with a certain man and her love for him, and he couldn't understand, could he accommodate her dream? She goes on anyway. And it's about how she passed away and her daughter discovers all this stuff about her and her lifestyle, and ultimately that who her father really is. Is not the father that she grew up thinking was her father. And the way the way they played this role, Charlotte, from the time they met at the museum where she was a curator, and then went to his cousin's house, and all the stuff that happened to them, and them he went to her apartment, and all of that, and then he's going to leave, and you think, he's just going to leave her flat, this, that, and the other, and then she's the one that realizes, if this is going to happen, I have to make it happen.
Got to make it happen. Take control.
And she made it happen. She went after. She said, I know who I am, and I know what I want. The hell with everything else. I'm going for what I want. And then she goes and tells him. She said, I chose you. Rather than all this other stuff, I decided you is what I need. Hey.
So what do you think about the leading lady who hadn't really done anything like this before?
I have mixed emotions about what I'm going to say. I wasn't that keen on her as an actress and as a person because I've been on the periphery and I've only seen her in Unsure and things like that she created at the beginning of her career. But as she has gone along and made better deals, more deals, and I've seen insight into her mind and she's got such tremendous ideas and where she wants to go and what she wants to do. I think she's fabulous. I got 3 magazines on my coffee table, and they're all turned to pages of pictures of her. Her eyes haunt me in my house, right in the next room. She's laying on the table. There's something about her eyes. She's a very compelling young lady. Beautifully done. I don't care if that's the first time she's tackled that kind. She did well. She did well.
You've grown to appreciate her talent.
Yeah, appreciate her talent. How broad it is. How broad it is. I mean, she's a very diversified thinker, and things she's coming up with for the future. I mean, go well beyond Insecure. Did do a Black Lady sketch show that she produced that was featuring part of it on 227, and they had a rap party, and I wasn't able to go. I had other business. I couldn't. I was home in Los Angeles, but I couldn't get to where they have that up in northern part where we shot it, northern part of the city. It's got Los Feliz near the zoo. That's where we shot it, and I was busy that day, and I couldn't get up there, and I didn't get to meet her. That was my point. I didn't get
Tell me about the experience on the project, though. What was that like?
The project was fun. It was a fun project, and they just did a spoof of 227. In retrospect, back when we were young, they were doing when we were young, and now we're doing it as we've gotten older. And I wake up in the bed with Sandra, with Jackie's character, rather than Marla's character, and it's all messed up. It's a funny. We saw it. It's a funny episode, but like I say, I'm intrigued to really meet her. My agents called me one day after the Black Lady sketch show and wanted to know that I think she could pick me up. Wow. I don't know what they were planning, and I don't mean pick me up on a date. Physically pick me up. Well, I weigh 205 pounds. I said, no way. I mean, she stacked up.
What
like
if she drops you?
I said, she stacked up like dirty clothes. She's fine, but I don't think she can hold me up at all. So that, but I'm looking forward to working with her one day.
Dirty clothes. Wait, hold on a second. Hold on. Let me just get this right. Stacked up like dirty clothes.
That's a male compliment on how fine a woman, like the record Bad Mama Jamma, that statement, that record, well, stacked up like dirty clothes, you gotta know she's built. She's built like
she's
I don't
fine.
know what. She's fine. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got it right.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, it's not derogatory. It's complimentary. She's got that black dirty clothes, man. That means she's hot.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to let that stew. We're going to go to Sylvie's Love. Right. Sylvie has a summer romance with a saxophonist who takes a summer job at her father's record store in Harlem. Back to Harlem. When they reconnect years later, they discover their feelings for each other have not faded with the years. What a sweet, sweet story. So, what are your thoughts? And it's another period piece. I've thrown in another period piece.
Yeah, all back in the 70s when they had long Cadillacs and Lincolns and all that kind of stuff. I was intrigued by the period as well as anything else in the movie. But the movie, it kept me on the edge of the seat because you didn't know what was going to happen because they get separated. You know, and she becomes an executive, he becomes a jazz star overseas and everything. And you try to figure out, well, how in the hell are they going to get back together? And then when they get back together and realize what happened.
Don't tell.
I'm not going to tell.
Don't tell. Okay.
I'm not going to tell. I wouldn't do that to you.
Okay.
What has happened during the period that they've been apart and everything, it's just a wonderful, the way they string it out and put it together and have a positive ending when it could be so tragic. It just got me. From the way it started out so simply, him coming in there, in that record store, my mother had a record store just like that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
My mother had a record store, a little store like that in Columbus, Ohio, years ago. My mother had a record store just like that, where the records are stacked up there, and she sat there in a chair all day, just like that. And when she did that, and he comes in, and the father in the back, and the whole thing just brought it back home to me because I remember that period very well, very well. I had a chance to get a '77 Chevrolet fast car with a Warden cam in it off of this guy. So I remember the '70s very well. That was a great film. It still is a great film. Everybody needs to see that film.
What stood out for me was one, her wardrobe was to die for.
Yeah. But she was filthy rich. Look how rich
she was so elegant. She was so elegant. And the fact that her mom, taught etiquette classes, I thought that was quite beautiful. And the scene where they kiss in the streets was just so beautifully lit and gorgeous. And there are some surprises with regards to the cast as well. So that I didn't know when the film was recommended to me.
Oh, really?
I didn't know. I just started watching Bridgerton, and I didn't know that the male lead from that show was in this film.
One of the band leaders was one of the guys in the band.
Exactly.
Right. And that I looked at the film and I didn't realize that was
Nnamdi?
No, I knew it was Nnamdi because he's a defensive back for the Oakland Raiders. I knew him. He married Washington, Kerry Washington.
Kerry Washington's husband.
From the Scandal. But
we have time.
The Spanish, the Mexican lady. She's married to the basketball player. I didn't realize that the guy from Bridgerton was going to be in it, and I didn't think to even check it out thoroughly, I guess, because I looked at the film the first time, and I didn't realize that it was Ava Longoria who played his girlfriend in the band. It was getting them to do all this other stuff and go out when Nnamdi and Tessa were trying to get together.
Yes, that was quite a role. I was surprised too. I thought she did well in the role.
She did do well. She's just different than I ever seen her play before. And I don't know how she got in that film. It's just not important, but it just surprised me. It just surprised because I enjoyed it. I just sat there right in there in my living room and watched the movie. I watched it 3 different times. I
Yeah,
loved it. I loved
it
it.
dealt with a
And
lot of
my third love, the third thing was the period and the cars. I used to sit on the curb and watch certain cars go by and say, "That's my car." And my brother would say, "No, that's my Lincoln. No, that's my Pontiac. That's my Oldsmobile." Because back then they made cars. They
What
made
was your
beautiful
first
cars.
car? What was your first car?
First car I had was a 1949 Chevrolet Deluxe that I stayed in the house for 6 months to save up the money to go get the car, and I still had to have my folks sign for it, so I could get it. It was a 1949 Deluxe. Then I got a Ford, and then I got a Pontiac, and I drove to California in 48 hours. Well, I was afraid I wouldn't make the trip in a 1965 Bonneville Pontiac.
Was that your favorite?
Of all the cars I owned, yeah, until I owned a Navigator a few years ago.
Hmm.
And my Corvette. The best car I ever had was a Chevrolet Corvette 1976. It's in Saudi Arabia now because I got to the place I couldn't get in and out of it anymore.
I
So,
see. I
but
see.
you may see me one day driving down the street at this age with a baseball cap on and the top down probably an 86. I don't like the later models,
Hmm.
but the older models I love.
Gonna be on the lookout. I'm gonna be on
Please,
the lookout.
please.
Indeed, I am. Indeed, I am. Well, we cannot close this segment on Black love without spending a little time talking about reality based. We spent the part one and part two mostly focused on movies and love and Black love in movies. I want to just highlight some couples that I admire and I'd like to hear your thoughts. And I'm going to first with our former president, President Obama, and our
Mm,
former First Lady, Michelle Obama.
mm,
Whenever I would see the two of them together holding hands, or he would kiss her on the cheek, and they would have public display
right,
of affection, which was unheard of.
right.
What's your thought?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. Something that you don't see us do. Even in the entertainment world, you don't see it you don't see it done that often, that way, But theirs is constant. And you know it's real because it's there all the time. It's there all the time. The only other couple I know that reminds me of that same kind of feeling is Marilyn McCool and Billy Davis Jr.
Oh, they were
From the
inseparable,
That's what
inseparable.
I'm telling you. From the 50 minutes when I first came out here, he and I used to get our hair cut in the same barber shop. And then she and I was in a play together called The Lusitanian Bogey. I got to know her
Right?
very well. And they go to a church that a friend of mine goes to. Every now and then I said, tell me, Al, said, oh, they want to know how you doing, Al. They're just a personification of ideal love and
Real
affection
love,
and
real
respect.
love.
All these years they've been together, and they look the same every time you see them. They're affectionate, they're respectful, and they're vibrant. They got an energy about them. It's real.
You know who makes me smile is Will Smith and Jada Pinkett.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
that they're an adorable couple. And Beyonce and Jay-Z.
Gabrielle and
Ah,
Dwayne.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think, there's just so many that have like withstood the test of time.
Right.
Ashford and Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
I smile when I see
Right.
Viola Davis and her husband.
Right. Right. I
So,
mean, you can see, and it's real. You can see it's real. It's not something that's being put on for camera or for whether the layout is where they are. This would go on if there no cameras were around. This is what they are. This is who they are.
and it must be really difficult to have a romance when you're constantly in the public eye. So when you're an actor, can you just maybe comment a little bit on that you were a hugely popular actor and anything that would go on in your life personally? I mean, Jack A was obviously in the tabloids with her romance. What is it like as an actor to have to live your romance so publicly?
Well, I never did, but it's difficult. It's difficult to maintain your privacy. It's difficult. People in Hollywood have a tough time with their personal lives. Anybody who knows me, I'm pretty much a recluse personally. You know, it's hard to find out where I am, what I'm about. You have to be somebody that's worked with me close in or something like that.
I understand.
And I've always been that way. But I know people who put the public through changes where people want autographs, they don't want autographs, blah, 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 blah. And my thing is, people say, you know, Mr. Williams, I was at a thing, they asked, what's the most appropriate word to describe you? And I said, approachable is the word to describe me. And I said, people said, well, you're always so nice. You never turn anybody down. You know you can't be happy about giving out autographs and all that stuff all the time, everywhere you go. I said, when people stop applauding seeing me, I'm in trouble. I said, but when I don't really want to be bothered, you don't see me. I don't come out. But when I come out my door, I know I'm a public figure. I'm open to the public and I'm all yours. When I don't want to be bothered anymore, I close up and go home. So that's the way I keep it.
So you just love working. You just love working, don't you?
I'm all about the work. I really am. And always have been. I'm all about the work. Whether it's theater, film, tape, whatever, I'm all about the work. The other stuff that comes in because of that this thing makes all that other stuff happen. When I go around and talk to kids and I say, if you got limousines and mansions and stuff on your mind, that's why you want to get into the business. I said, make sure you get a backup because number one, overnight sensations usually take 25 years. You got to feed and clothe yourself.
You don't become Will Smith overnight. He works at being
you have to work to
that
get
he
that.
is.
You know, so and that 85% of the membership of the Screen Actors Guild Union don't make a living acting. Don't. 15% make a comfortable living or a good living or an average living just by acting. The rest of them sell real estate, they sell cars, they do all kinds of stuff. You just don't know about it. So think about that, you know. And also, I got a little quip I'll throw out before I forget. Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken.
That's some advice to all the lovers out there. Just be yourself and you'll find love.
Right.
Goodbye for now. I'm Charlotte Hambrick in New Orleans.
And I'm Hal Williams right here saying goodbye and take care, be safe, and we love you. See you later now. Come back.
We love you.
Bye-bye.